Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have Mr. Phill Robinson. How are you, Phil?
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Really good today. Thanks for asking.
And thank you for coming on the show. What I would say is in my journey so far with the G&T Sessions, this is an episode I've been particularly looking forward to because I consider you, Phil, as being one of the tech titans of the software industry. Sorry?
I don't feel like a titan.
Well, it's all relative, isn't it? It's all relative. But because obviously, when I was in my younger career, I was, working in large organizations. And obviously what I used to do is buy software and usually buy software from the companies that you work for. So it's nice to finally be on the other side of it. So, in the spirit of today's show, I suppose on today's episode, I suppose the quick question would be to initially kick it off with what gets you up in the morning these days? What's going on in Phil's world?
There's two answers to that question. One answer is Parkinson's because I've got Parkinson's disease. So normally I'm up at 2 a.m, so that gets me up. Gives you insomnia. Was one of the things it does to you. So I get up early. So if you get anybody gets an email from me at 2 a.m, you now know why. What gets me out of bed in the morning in terms of energy and excitement and enthusiasm is an initiative I started this year, a year ago, called Boardwave, which is about connecting software CEOs and founders across Europe to build a community that can help and support each other build better software companies. So that's the official answer, but the unofficial answer is I'm up early through a medical condition.
And how are you finding that? Is that are you getting on with that? Is it?
How do I find that? I think I've been diagnosed for 6 years, so I live with this disease. I know it pretty well by now and how it works, and so I can manage myself relatively well most of the time. Anybody says how I am, I'll say I'm okay today because it might not be tomorrow, and it just happens on what a random set of things could happen, and some days are better.
It goes
than
through
others.
cycles, kind of thing.
Yeah, today's a good day. It's an exercise in energy management most of the time.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and my family's obviously was suffered from a different kind of condition, motor neuron disease, which obviously, and also now dementia. So I can relate to the situation. I suppose it's making the best of every day that you're on this planet, isn't it? I suppose that's the thing about doing it, isn't it? It's, how do you maximise your days?
We're all here for a limited time. So we all should have a sense of urgency to do things. But I think when you get something like this, it just puts it to stark relief that actually, in terms of relatively good health that I've got today, that won't last for as long as most people's. And so you really do have to get along with doing the things you want to do and living your life. And so, 57 now, I retired from full-time employment at 56, which is a bit early, just with a desire to go and do the things I want to do with my wife and family before I maybe can't do them later.
Well, I wish you all the best with that. I mean, obviously, nobody knows what can happen in the future. So I think it's a really good message to say, how do you make the most of it? So all power to you on that. On the other point you made about, and I suppose this was why I wanted to get you on the show as well, because not only sharing your story about your background and what you've been able to achieve, but also I suppose the great thing I saw was that really putting the European software industry on the map. I've worked for Silicon Valley, and I do work today, even work for Silicon Valley based companies. And I was so pleased when you launched it last April with Boardwave. The actual, actually punching above weight and shouting about it, because it does feel like sometimes there is always like a US dominance with software companies out of Silicon Valley, and yet there's some fantastic businesses and fantastic people over this side of the pond. So, what was the trigger for that? Was there a particular trigger that made you embark on that kind of journey, that project?
No, not really. I sat thinking about the things I've done over the last 30 odd something years, and how I can leverage my expertise, skills, and the people I know to do something positive for the industry. That was this time last year, sitting at the kitchen table. And, I'm a marketeer by background. I've not been a CEO for 15 years, but before that I was a CMO and a marketing director. So I've got a marketing expertise. I know a lot of people in software, and I'm passionate about helping people do a better job building great software companies, which I think we've got the knowledge and expertise in Europe to do, but unfortunately, so far, it hasn't happened enough. So there's been some great success stories, but not enough of them. So if I tell you in 2020, I think 36 of the top 100 companies by value in the US were software-enabled businesses. In Asia, it was 7 out of 100. No, sorry, 26 out of 100, and Europe was 7. So Europe was significantly behind in building global software companies. So that's one of the reasons why I think, well, why would that be, and why isn't it more successful generating wealth and improving the economy and the growth of the economy in Europe? Good, because the people are here, the skills are here, the expertise is here, but it just hasn't got it together so far.
I suppose it's that classic Mark Andreessen quote, isn't it? Every company's a software company, but it sounds like we're sort of a bit on the back foot still. We
are. I think one of the reasons is that if you think about the whole of Europe and all businesses that buy software, in last year we bought as much software as the US did in 2016. So the amount of money spending on software is not as much as the US, but it's only 6 years behind. It's not far behind. So the economy in terms of the amount of software purchase in Europe is pretty big. The problem is, for every $7 that are spent, 6 are spent on infrastructure software, and 1 is spent on application software. And unfortunately, infrastructure software is dominated by the US, so we buy a lot of American software. And in application software, we can do very, very well, and we do very well. People like SAP, but also national organizations that sell application software by vertical or by market do well too. Is only a relatively small proportion of the spend. So that's a challenge for us, just in terms of their dominance. But there's things we can do to circumnavigate and improve the position for ourselves if we just be a bit more proactive.
Is that down? I mean, that's some great stats, by the way. Thanks for sharing that. Is that down to the ambition, do you think, of the businesses that are headquartered over in EMEA, or is it just is it some cultural things around the risk of scaling too much, or the ambition? Is it a combination of both? I don't know.
There's 4 or 5 things that are the key conditions you need, and one of them is that people will quote appetite for risk as being lower in Europe than the US. So, risk aversion is higher in Europe. I actually would call it less about risk, more about fatigue. So it takes longer to scale a business in Europe than it does in the US. To give you an idea, this is some stats we've got out of Boardwave over the first year. We've now got 700 members in this community that we've created across Europe, 700 CEOs and founders. In the US, a good business with the right support can grow to $100 million of turnover in 12 years. A great business will do in 6 or 7. So $100 million turnover, you're a scaled business, you're pretty successful.
Yeah.
You go on from there to IPO or do something else. Certainly you've got the opportunity to go global. In Europe, if I look at our member base, it takes on average 13 years to get to $50 million of turnover.
Wow.
So slightly longer for half the size. And so there's this thing I call it founder fatigue, which is it's taking a long time.
Right, okay.
And since it takes such a long time, I might get a bit tired along the journey. I lose my focus. I may get an offer from a competitor, often an American one.
Right.
And I'm more inclined to take the offer because I've been doing this for so long. And that's the end of the mission for that company because it's now consumed into another business.
Rolled up.
So that will never be a global software company anymore. So the challenge is, how do we help founders who built startups into scale-ups and started to scale, do that quicker with less risk and with more support. The ecosystem in the UK and in Europe for startups is actually getting to be quite good. The ecosystem and support for scale-ups once they're out of startup mode is not very good. So we've got this cohort of companies that are startups in the UK, as an example. There are the ecosystem of the value of software startups in the UK is $900 billion. In Germany, it's 400. France, it's 250, and I think Netherlands is 250. So we've done.
So UK is a dominant play. It's always the number one market.
Right? Then you've got this huge number of software companies that are leaving startup mode, and getting to some of them becoming scaling up businesses. And there's loads of support, government support, private initiatives, clubs, groups, whatever, helping founders of startups. Once they get some initial success, they start driving revenue growth. In the scale-up mode, it falls away. They're on their own. So that's when they need help. They need help on the journey through from being a startup into scale-up. And that bit there is missing in the UK and actually in most of Europe. And so one of the things Boardwave will do is helping people to scale. Through leveraging the expertise of people in the community that have done this before and know how to do it and how to avoid the mistakes and the issues, so that they can continue to grow and build perhaps a global business from a business that will otherwise has sort of plateaued a bit, taken too long, and the founders took the money and sold the company.
Right. So it's a bit like, but there's also that complexity, I suppose, in when you're in the US, you've got one language usually, and you've got one currency, and you've got also my observation, that you've got the same view, is that there is definitely a view of adopting technology and buying technologies is people will take it's a bit like the risk thing. They'll embrace new technology quicker, whereas in Europe you've got the complexity of culture, language, currency, etc. So even though I've got the euros, obviously, but is that what you see as well as a factor?
Yeah, if you build a piece of software in San Francisco and it works for the first few customers, and it works in San Francisco, it's going to work in Boston. If it works in Boston, it'll work in Vancouver or Toronto or in Dallas or New York. There's a single North American market that you can sell into. And of course, Europe is fragmented by culture and language. We've got the benefit in the UK of being English language speaking, which is one of the reasons why perhaps we've got a more successful ecosystem of startups. But you've got this more fragmented market in Europe. So when you get to a certain scale locally, you want to go internationally, you've got the complexity and cost of doing it market by market. So there's a few things you can do to try and improve your velocity and deal with that situation from day one. So look at Israel. And Israel's built an amazing tech ecosystem and lots of successful startups.
Lots of innovation, yeah.
Lots of innovation, doing really well. And it's a tiny, tiny market. And so what they do is they build the business to be international from day one.
Right.
So we all need to think the same way, that we are going to be an international company. We'll build that culture and the fabric of a business as an international business right at the beginning, which will make it easier later. Or pick a market that's transnational. So sell to companies that are global companies or transnational businesses or transnational industries, like the airline industry, for instance, or some of the travel companies. The differences are there's no difference between one market and another. Enter a market that is so large locally that you can build a scaled business in your local country without having to go international until much later. Or the fourth option is accept it because it's going to take a bit longer and be patient.
Well, when you were talking a bit earlier, I was thinking about it's not a marathon; it's an ultra marathon. It's like a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely help people go faster. But if you are a founder in, I don't know, Milan or Zurich or wherever, there's not a lot of people to talk to in Milan and Zurich about how they did it before then and how they scaled their business. There's not a lot of people to learn from locally. Whereas if I'm a founder of a software business in Silicon Valley, I can drive down Highway 101 and see the logo of Facebook and Google and Oracle and Salesforce and Apple and everybody else, and huge success that they've had, and feel much more confident that I've got the support that I need. And you do. There's a community there. It's 40 miles long, and everybody's sorted out as everybody else. So my kids went to school with Steve Jobs' kids. It's not because we were particularly wealthy or anything. It's just that we live near each other. It's
just the environment, isn't it? Yeah, it's just the environment.
So as a consequence of that, you've got this inbuilt support system where people are openly asking people each other questions. How did you do that? How do I do this? What did you do when you had the problem? How does this work? What should I do next? I worked for Mark Benioff as CMO of Salesforce in the noughties, and I drive in the car to work in the morning with him, and he'd be calling Larry Ellison saying, I've got this idea. What do you think? And they do it all the time.
It's very collaborative. Yeah, it's a lot more. I mean, I've worked in Silicon Valley a couple of times before as well, and what you find is that it's like the social and business side kind of merge. So it's all very kind of collaborative and help people will genuinely help each other. Whereas I don't know, is that, like I suppose your comments about the UK, that's more collegiate. That's more kind of, there's quite a close knit, London-based, national-based community. But it's
a European problem actually, because we've got 30 years of experience now building software companies. Whether you've built SAP or you've helped build Salesforce in Europe or build Dassault Systems in France or wherever. There's loads of people with great experience, but they're completely fragmented and isolated by distance, language, and culture.
Yeah,
and don't talk to each other. So I'm a founder of a CEO of a software company. I have no access to any of this knowledge and expertise. So sitting in Silicon Valley, they're on tap. It's just so
it's on the doorstep, isn't it? Yeah,
and so that's why we created Boardwave. Boardwave is an initiative to sort of build a map of all the knowledge and expertise in Europe, so you can navigate your way through it and find the people that can help you in this community where it's free to join and everybody can join at the same level. There's no tiers and levels.
There's no hierarchy. Yeah.
There's no hierarchy. And so you can join and be a part of this community as if you're living in Silicon Valley. And we all are there to help one another to do it. So we're trying to get rid of all the benefits or advantages that Silicon Valley might have over Europe and level the playing field a bit.
And what's been the feedback so far?
It's been amazing. I thought it was going to be a side project at the beginning of this year.
You thought you were going to be like in a tap room in a pub or something with a few of you, and then it blows up into hundreds and thousands of people.
Me on my own at the kitchen table, and now it's like we've got an employed team of people that work for Boardwave. We've got 700 members. It's free to join, as I said, so everybody joins at the same level. And then if you're a startup founder with no money, you've got the same opportunities as everybody else. And it's funded by our partners, and the partners are 50% of them are investors.
Okay.
50% of them are other organizations that supply to software companies.
Right.
We've got 50 of these. I thought we'd have half a dozen. We've got 50 of them. And they're funding a fairly sophisticated program already where we've got, a software platform we've built that matches people together so that they can help each other and become members of each other. We've got events that focus on networking, events that focus on debating issues. We've got workshops, and we're doing physical stuff in the UK, France, Germany, Benelux already. We've got members throughout Europe. It's taken off great, in an amazing way. I'm so surprised, but thrilled.
We must be pleased, though. We must be pleased. It's fantastic. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's testament to your resilience and your keep I suppose positioning in the right way as well. And you've obviously tapped into a real big demand. It's quite incredible if you think about it. As you say that we've both worked in the software industry for quite a few decades, and yet that's the thing about you've kind of unleashed this new concept, and now suddenly everybody's buying into it, which is fantastic. So
I think it's sorely needed, and it's great that we've tapped into an unmet need and people want to support it. So, and we've got some great people involved that are very senior in the industry that are really helping us to build the network and the community. I
know strictly speaking, we shouldn't be speaking, Phill, should we? Because obviously, my allegiance should be to the blue logo, the blue logo of SAP. Because obviously when you were in your illustrious background working for certain other companies, which you maybe got a red logo or other coloured logos. We were supposed to be in competition, but I know that you've obviously built the bridges on that. So one of my very very infamous and famous CEOs from SAP actually is now part of the group, I think, isn't he? Leo.
Yeah. So I built the website for Boardwave myself just to see if I could do it because I've done one before.
Oh, cool.
Put it live, and the first day it went live, Leo was literally the first person to sign up. I didn't know him. I knew of him and knew his success.
Oh, you never met him before? Okay.
No, I knew his track record, but he signed up on the webpage. I'm like, well, what's this about? This is. I called him and I'm like, is that Leo, the guy that built SAP? He said, yeah. Signed up on my webpage. He said, I've read this, and if you deliver this, it's amazing. And he said, if I'd had it when I was at SAP, I'd have been successful. And he's been one of the most enthusiastic patrons of the group since it started. We've got other people like Chano Fernandez, who's European. He's Spanish by background. He lives in London, but has been running Workday as a coach for the last 3 years.
Go CEO, yeah.
He's been there 9 years, and the revenue went from $500 million to $6.5 billion.
Wow.
He's been there, so he knows a bit about scaling software companies. People like Steve Garnett, who built Salesforce Europe, and Steve Kelly, who was CEO.
Steve Kelly, yeah.
Lots of other people too, all super nice people, successful people. What I recognized when I started connecting with these senior people that I've known through my career and building this group of patrons was they're mostly, not all, but mostly white males. And I didn't think that was particularly, and older, because I've got a lot of experience, particularly interesting and enticing for the next generation of people, or even for the current generation of people in terms of supporting diversity. So I thought, well, actually what I'm going to do is I'll build a shadow group of people, we call them the next wavers, people that are younger with potential to change the world with the technology they're building. And when I started doing that, without trying hard, it turns out to be a 50-50 mix of men and women, and supportive of different ethnic backgrounds too. So that then actually begins to balance that out a little bit and make it a bit more a broader appeal, if you like. But the older folks, people like me that are in their late 50s and 60s, are the first generation of people that started their career in software in the mid-80s. Yeah. Finished it in software.
Right.
The first group of people that had an entire career from beginning to end as software people. And then now, for the first time, the first cohort is now retiring.
Right.
So if they retire and go home and don't work anymore, don't share that knowledge that they've gained over 30 years.
It's gone. So you think it's gone.
Mine in my brain is going to go soon because I've got Parkinson's. It's got to get out of here. Yeah. In the minds of a whole load of founders that don't have to suffer the mistakes that I made.
So it's like a giving back piece, isn't it? It's like really giving back to the next generation.
The three phases of life, which is education, accumulation, not just in wealth, but in terms of knowledge and experience, and then returning and dissemination back to the community and back to the people that you want to support. And so it's a bit about giving back for those folks.
Yeah, that's a bit of Deepak Chopra. That I heard that same phrase from Deepak Chopra the other week.
Yeah, did you? Oh, no.
Yeah, no, it's the same way he explains it as well. About he's in his fourth phase now, I think, which is self-actualization. I think he's 76 now.
Right.
So he's in London next.
Of like, you know what? I had a great career. I enjoyed every minute of it in software. It was fantastic. I'm a working class kid from Leicester. I never expected to do the things I've done, and so I'm very grateful. And now what I want to try and do is make sure I build this initiative so that not just me, but a whole lot of other people like me can help the next group of software founders and CEOs to be more successful than we were. Build some really successful global software companies that compete with Silicon Valley and the rest.
All power to you. Leicester City as well. That's amazing. The most important question actually is, what's the swag like?
What's the swag like?
Yeah. I mean, you can't have a name called Boardwave and not have some kind of like really funky swag.
Well, what do you think we should do? Is it surfboards or like?
Well, I think surfboards. There's a whole range. I think you can build. Isn't there? There's like surfboards. There's skateboards. There's t-shirts. There's hoodies.
It was gonna be called, and I thought this was a better name, Motherboard.
Because was it? All right.
On the board, right. This is the motherboard of boardable boards of the software.
Yeah, the mother of all. Yeah, okay.
But someone said we couldn't do that. I can't remember who. So we end up with Boardwave. I think it's quite good. So it's like the next wave. How do we? Exactly.
I think it's fantastic. It's a really good one. Your marketing genius was coming out there, Phill.
I didn't think of that name, actually. Somebody else did. I think it's a great name, and I think we should have some swag. Right now, the only thing we've got is these notebooks with the logo on them. And it's
so it's very understated. It's very British.
But you know what, though? The thing is, we're not tight. We want to do things with quality. We're not wasteful, because we're trying to be an impact-driven business where the community needs are above profit. We're not focused on profit. And then if we do have money left, at the end of the year, the surplus, we give it to charity.
Right.
So yeah, probably that money we would have spent on surfboards will go to medical research.
Well, no. One other thing, the reason I was thinking was, so you said about the what do you call it, the new surfers or the next wavers. So if you think about my observation with the startup culture in the countries that I worked in, is that there is that kind of, some of the CEOs, founders that I've worked with that are, younger than both of us, they kind of obsess about what's the next variant of their swag. It's like their kind of uniform, isn't it? So, if you have something that addresses that, you probably have a massive influx of. Don't
worry.
And you'll be walking around Old Street, and you'll be seeing all these Boardwaves, hoodies going around and stuff like that.
I'll get you. I've got some t-shirts. I'll send you one.
Okay, no problem. That wasn't the reason for the point, actually. But anyway, I saw actually yesterday. It was quite interesting that there was the final Technation report actually before it gets transitioned to the new model. It's incredible, isn't it? $4 trillion by 2032.
Potential for software or tech in the UK to grow to be an economy worth $4 trillion in the next 5 years. I think it is. I agree with them. Like, if we're at 900 billion today, it's nearly $1 trillion today. We've got plenty of potential from these amazing startup CEOs and founders that built great businesses with the support of Technation and others. And they're now coming out of startup, a lot of them coming out of startup phase and becoming scale-ups. And my concern is that we don't give enough support to make as many as possible viable and successful through the next stage of their journey. I think Technation closing down is a terrible mistake, actually, by the government. But we need to make sure we pick up the baton for them and help these scale-ups to do a good job and make more of them successful.
Did you get to the bottom of that? Because I know we were talking on LinkedIn about that. Was the whole thing around the Barclays angle? Is that now clearer why that happened, or why they decided to switch it?
It's a bidding process, which is a contract renewal was up for renewal with Technation, I think, and people were openly encouraged to bid, and the bid was won by Barclays Eagles.
Right, okay. Which
is another initiative for startups. So I'm talking to them about how they're going to deploy the capital and support the sector. I just feel that we could have done both. It's like, why do we have to pick one or the other? We can support Barclays Eagles and support Technation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we've done a lot of good work in the last 10 years. So I've got no issue with either one of them. I've got more of an issue with the government and it's the way it supports the software industry and tech industry in the UK right now, which says things like we want to be the next Silicon Valley. They're not really backing that up with tangible.
You mean there's rhetoric, but there's not enough tangible action. You mean, or
there's some progress, but I think it's not enough. If you want to unlock the $4 trillion industry over the next 5 years,
you've got to get behind it.
You've got to get behind it properly.
And who in your view in the UK government is kind of championing that? I mean, I know Rishi kind of talks about it a bit, but he's more of he's got. I don't sense he's kind of as tech aware as somebody else. Who would you say there's a mover and shaker in the UK government for that?
But he lived in California.
I know he lived in California. Yeah.
Quite a long time, so he gets it. I think He gets the cultural benefits that they exhibit. I mean, there's obviously Michelle Milburn, who's the new innovation minister, but she's got a short period of time between now and the election to make progress. So either her or the opposition are going to need to pick up the baton after the election, drive it forward for the next few years.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, so one of the things we talk about on this show, on this episodes that we talked about, these guests is about peaks and valleys. So some guests come on and they obviously want to talk about just peaks, yeah. And that's fine, yeah. But I suppose if you were kind of comparing some of the peaks and valleys that you've been through from a business point of view and personal point of view, I know you touched on one a bit earlier, obviously, but what would you want to share with the audience around that? What's your biggest takeout? Because I know that what I've seen is with your background, you kind of went from being a product manager to being like a marketing, run a marketing team, and then be a CEO and then a chairman. You kind of evolved in your career, and you probably learnt a lot along the way from that. Any thoughts or any stories you can share around that?
Yeah, I think that much more from things that went wrong than when things go right. Much more to learn from that and lessons to be had. I think that I also feel like there's moments of epiphany or moments of clarity that you get in your career, which leads you to make different decisions than the ones you would have made before. And those are the things that I think about quite a lot. So I'll give you an example. So I've been CMO of Salesforce in Silicon Valley. My kids wanted to come back to the UK because one of them wanted to go to university in Newcastle. And I was like, Newcastle? What do you mean Newcastle? We live in
right.
Go to Stanford.
Well, there was a particular course he wants to go on or something, was it?
It was better. She wanted to go to Newcastle to product management.
Right.
Product design. And so we came back. And so I then decided I didn't want to work for the Americans who I'd been working for 15 years through Oracle, Sybase, Siebel, Salesforce.com, and be CEO for the first time.
Right.
And I learned a lot in the first year. I joined a venture-backed business in Cambridge, which was small. It had 40 people. It was pre-revenue. It was founders that had built the company so far, but they wanted to bring it to market and needed somebody that got sales and marketing expertise to do that.
Right.
So they hired the CEO amongst the founders. And what I found out was that it was a CDN, content delivery network, for delivering video assets across the internet.
Oh, this is the Velocity.
Velocix,
yeah. Okay.
And what I discovered was, as we brought it to market and sold the first contracts where people put traffic on the network, was that it didn't really work. It was more a prototype than a product, and it hadn't got hard edges, and so it would fall over and needed a lot of maintenance and management.
Wasn't battle tested.
Wasn't battle tested. It wasn't scalable. So I ended up talking to them about selling the company, and it was a really weird conversation because we sold quite a lot of bandwidth in the first year, and they thought it was a great success. I said, actually, it's not a success because every time I put more traffic on the network, it falls over. You need to rebuild the product, and if you're not prepared to spend another 25 million quid or whatever it was to do it, then this isn't going to work. And they're like, no, it's great. You're doing a really good job. Just keep going. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I can't sell this to other customers. It's not right. No, it doesn't work. And they wouldn't listen. And the only way that I got them to listen was to resign.
Wow.
So I resigned. And then they just, they did take notice and eventually sold the company to Alcatel-Lucent in Paris. And actually the core technology is still in some of their hardware.
Oh, okay.
Where they distribute their hardware across the internet to deliver content. So it did get used well eventually, but in another format. And I learned the venture world probably wasn't for me. I felt like there's quite a lot of risk involved to be a portfolio CEO, and I ended up working for a PE company, or a PE company's investment, a company that they invested in, called Iris, which is a software for accountancy. It's accountancy software. It's a leader. And I went to work for them as CEO and was there 7 years and had a great time. And it was a more scaled business. It was less aggressive on its growth, but profitable, owned by private equity.
Right.
And we took it from 30 million to 150 million of turnover.
Fantastic.
With good profit margins over 7 years. But one of the things...
And you'd be competing with people like Sage, I presume, in that kind of space.
Yeah, well, Sage, actually, we bounced them out of the sector. So they were doing bookkeeping with one thing, which an SME can do themselves, or do it. Accountancy is the reporting of your accounts.
Yeah.
By different sector, by professional accountants. And they just kept losing market share to us in that particular niche. So talking about epiphanies, first, it was I felt like it needed to be more aggressively run than it was at the time. It wasn't a bad business. And I just worked really hard for the first couple of years to get it in the shape I thought it needed to be in and improve its growth and its prospects. And the harder I worked, we did get more success. And I sort of attributed the hours I was putting in to the level of outcome for the company. And I was going to work one morning it was a November day and it was foggy, and I was driving down the road to work and being a bit miserable, going, I've got to do something different because it's killing me. I'm doing too much work. I'm not seeing my family, not seeing my kids, not going to the gym, not eating properly.
Oh, right. Okay. So it was like it was affecting your health. Yeah.
Everything. And relationships. And so I'm like, what would happen instead of working 11 hours a day for 6 days a week? What would happen if I just did 9 to 5? What would happen to the business? So I thought, I'll try it and see what happens. Do you know what happened?
Nothing.
Nothing changed. It still carried on as it was and was successful. It actually created a boundary for me where I had to delegate.
Right. Okay.
I had to delegate. Couldn't do it myself because I was working 11 hours a day. So I had to be more.
You stopped putting more sticks on your back.
Yeah, more trusting of the management team, give them more responsibility, delegate to them more, and still get the same amount of work done, but other people were doing it. And I think that was a lesson in the transition from being a manager to a leader, managing staff or people. You're sort of leading the company by example and moving forwards. And that was a shift in mindset for me. But it changed my life. It changed my whole trajectory and outlook on life in terms of being a leader of a software company. And it helped us grow to become this much bigger business, one of the biggest private software companies in the UK. That
sounds like that was a mindset shift as well but also a kind of it sounds like it was, I went through that when I was at Tesco as well, but I won't talk about that right now. But is it kind of like it was, you were kind of like going to hit a wall and you had to change? It kind of forced your mind to change and be more aggressive with your time and your schedule and prioritization. Yeah,
exactly that. And so it forces you into a different way of managing people or leading people and letting them get on with it. So that was a massive shift and an epiphany moment. And that helped me lead a happier life, go to the gym, eat properly, see my kids, see my family, decide what's important to me, not just work. And the company still be very successful, but by managing through the team. And so that was an epiphany moment for me. And that was an important moment. And then we went on from there. We were there 7 years. We sold in the first few years from Hellman Freeman, which was a PE owner, to HG Capital, and they still own it today with a successor CEO called Alona, who's very good. I was chair for a year, and then I ended up working in the Netherlands. And the epiphany moment in the Netherlands, which is with a company called Exact, which is similar to IRS but bigger. Today it's 400 and something million turnover business with 50% EBITDA margins. It's a big company. The epiphany moment for me there was the Parkinsons, actually. So I got the job in the summer, and almost to the day they told the old CEO that they'd hired as a replacement, that's the day I got my diagnosis. So they were relying upon me turning up for this new job because I'd fired the CEO. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure I can go. I've got Parkinson's. So I talked to the specialist, and he's like, well, no, why wouldn't you go? You know, you're pretty healthy, right? Why don't you give it a go? You should be fine. So I went, and I didn't tell anybody I had Parkinson's for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Because I felt that it would undermine my credibility. It's new, it's a new language, it's a new culture, it's a new everything, new lifestyle, living in a new place.
So did you move the whole family over there then as well?
Wife and I, kids are older, they're grown up now.
Right.
My wife and I were there. And I just felt that left me vulnerable. And I didn't tell anybody. And it was like going to work every day with a lie. You couldn't bring your whole self to work. There was a bit missing, which you were leaving at the door. And also I felt like with private equity, sometimes they might be a bit more, might be quite upset or aggressive about changing me out for somebody else.
Right. So you're fearful of that?
Fearful of that. I think lots of fear with people with Parkinson's about coming out of the closet, if you like, disease, because they're concerned that that's going to undermine their credibility, undermine them professionally, and they won't get the promotion, or they get fired, or they don't get the pay rise they're expecting. So I followed that route for a couple of years, and then decided. Then we were selling the company. We had some success. We'd grown the business. It was more profitable, more successful. We had offers for the company. We sold to KKR, and in the process of selling the company,
KKR, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I'd said to all of the bidders, look, I'm not going to be a long-term answer as CEO. First of all, I'm British, I'm not Dutch. I'm not going to live here forever. Second of all, I've got to go back for family reasons. I can't be full-time. I could do something part-time for you in transition, but we're going to have to find a CEO. And
the Netherlands is not that bad, though.
It's not bad, but I obviously had reasons to come back, right?
Yeah, no, I understand.
And so, so I sort of set up the narrative that I'd help them in transition, but we need to find somebody else, and that can undermine the value of a company. The CEO,
discontinuity, yeah.
And so that was a concern of the old investors, but actually in the end it was fine. And then once we got the final bids in and won, which was KKR, I told them why. And again, I thought maybe they'd be upset because somehow they bought a company, and then suddenly realised that the CEO was incapable of doing the job. But they were very supportive, actually. Very human about it, very supportive. And so I decided to be brave and tell everybody else. So we have a stand-up meeting every quarter with all the employees, 1,000 people around the world, and people locally in the room. And I made a little video, explained it, and I said, look, there's something you don't know about me. I need to tell you this now, and this is it. Showed them the video. I didn't know how I was going to feel or what was going to happen, but I got a huge round of applause, and actually nobody could have been more supportive. And that taught me a lot, because I'd always felt like as a CEO, you need to be a bit invincible.
Right.
And I think
and a bit aloof from the people, do you think? Or?
That makes you unapproachable, actually. It doesn't make you human, and people don't connect with you because you're out of reach. And therefore you don't really get the best conversations and really understand how people feel and think about their job, the company, and things we're doing. And so I learned about the importance as a leader of being vulnerable. And that vulnerability was a strength over the next 2-3 years as I continued to phase out and come back to the UK in leading the company onwards. It was a strength, not a weakness, because it made people come and talk to me more, made me more approachable, made me part of the team versus being aloof. And I just thoroughly enjoyed the time in the Netherlands because of it. So that was another epiphany about leadership, about being vulnerable and real, bringing your whole self to work.
Yeah.
And we did a whole bunch of work around it about, chronic disease and people with chronic diseases. And we had a guy that had terminal cancer that was coming to work and been coming to work for a long time, and nobody knew. And a whole bunch of people that. A whole bunch of people that
start to share their stories.
And so become a bit more open about what's going on in their lives that they never shared with other people before, and it made them enjoy work more and be more productive.
It must have brought a kind of a more of a positive connection within the company as well. You would have thought, is that right?
It did, yeah. I mean, if I thought people were going to be worried about me having Parkinson's, I couldn't have been further from the truth. One of the guys, I didn't even know him very well as an employee, decided to have a lunch. Like everybody would come in for lunch, and they'd buy a lunch ticket for this meal, which was going to be for Parkinson's.
All right.
If you bought a ticket on this day in the canteen, bought this meal, all the money was going to charity. And thought he was going to sell 30 tickets. he sold 1,300 tickets.
Wow.
And then, obviously, we invited all the local charities, Parkinson's charities, to the lunch, and it turned into a big event. But every employee came. Every single one bought a ticket. That was local.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's another one of my epiphanies, was just about vulnerability.
I suppose it's like, don't underestimate the human reaction to the story that you can sell. You can tell, if you share it, then it makes you. Well, I mean, everybody goes through their situations at some point, but you don't sometimes know what's going on in their life, do you?
No, you never do. You never know what's going on behind closed doors. And people talk about authentic leadership. You can only be authentic if you're vulnerable and put yourself out there and be honest. Otherwise, you're leaving something behind and you're not entirely authentic.
Well, also, the risk is as well, you lead like a double life, isn't it? It's like you got the go to work person and you got the person at home, haven't you? It's like,
yeah, you do.
And there's a lot of movies around that, like Clark Kent and like Bruce Wayne and stuff like that. But
yeah, definitely, I was leading a double life for a couple of years. My family knew, my kids knew, my wife knew, and my friends knew. Nobody at work had a clue what's going on with me. So I did a whole bunch of work with the media in the Netherlands to try and raise the profile of Parkinson's and explain to people that if you're an employer, you didn't need a prejudice against people with Parkinson's or any other chronic disease, because they're more than capable of doing the job. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with these kind of conditions, it's a bit like with me, with my dad. My dad passed away from MND, which is what Stephen Hawking had, and I don't know to this day whether I'm going to contract MND at some point. You just don't know, because I think that's the same thing I presume with Parkinson's. You don't know what the cause is. It's not known, is it? It's not 100% clear on, is it hereditary or is it?
It's 10% genetic, 90% environmental, and the 90% that's environmental they think is through pesticides, which most of the population are tolerant of, and therefore can consume, fruit and vegetables.
Which is actually the same, because I read that on the NHS website the day before we met, and that's one of the reasons they've given for MND as well. About pesticides, yeah.
We're spraying stuff on our fruit and veg to make it more productive in the field for the farmer, but we don't know why some small number of us are not tolerant to it, and it's the gut-brain axis. It's a disease that starts in your gut, and there's almost an autoimmune response which affects the brain with Parkinson's. So, yeah.
And it's to do with this kind of particular part, isn't it, where it's to do with dopamine, I think, isn't it? It's like the dopamine generation.
is the chemical in your
cells,
in your brain that connects neurons together to shoot messages around your body to move. It's a movement disorder. So the piece of the brain called the substantia nigra that makes dopamine slowly dies away with people with Parkinson's over years. The more it dies away, the less it produces. The less it produces, the more your movement is impaired. But it's misunderstood, because when we say movement, we think about people with Parkinson's shaking.
Right.
One form of movement, which is sort of the mechanical movement of your arms and legs and hands and joints. There's all sorts of other movements that we all exhibit every day that you don't think about. So when your iris moves or opens and closes to exposure to light and dark conditions, well, mine doesn't open up in the night the way yours does. So I can't see in the dark. I can't smell anything, so my nose stopped working, because the feature of my brain that's down here somewhere that controls smell doesn't work. Your voice gets affected because your voice box is moving under your body, under your brain's control, which is again with dopamine, or your stomach and your digestive system and the ability to process food. Is this peristaltic movement of your bowel and your throughout your system also stops working. So there's about 30 different things you can go wrong with Parkinson's, and shaking is just one of them. So people don't really understand. Most people misunderstand it as an old person's disease. Many people that have got it are old, but there's a general onset Parkinson's too, and there's plenty of people like me that have got it. And it's not just about shaking; it's all sorts of other movements. So, my hands are rock solid. I don't shake. But I've got a whole bunch of other things going on inside my body.
Mm. And it is. I mean, I always talked about the other day was you were saying there's some recent breakthrough in some research around a kind of a.
Yeah, I mean, the last new treatment for Parkinson's, proper major breakthrough was synthetic dopamine, which we all take. Actually, I take it every day. 50 years ago, so it's not had any massive new breakthroughs since then. But I'm on the board of the development board of a charity called Cure Parkinsons, which is one of very few charities around the world that focus on finding a cure.
Right.
And there are currently 6 phase 3 trials globally for medication that has a curative benefit for Parkinson's.
Okay.
Which is the last stage before it hits the street. Well, it goes to the regulator before they approve it to hit the streets. So it's
so it goes into like pharmacy distribution kind of thing.
So, yeah, it ends up in the pharmacy.
Right.
So there's 6, of which 2 came from this charity that I'm involved with, which is a pretty good hit rate for them. And so when I say curative, it means that it's disease modifying drugs. So it's either going to slow it, stop it, or reverse it. And actually, those 6, I think, are more inclined to be slowing or trying to slow or stop it than reverse it. Reversal would be genetic or stem cell types of treatment, which are further away. But at least if there are drugs out there that can slow down and stop the disease, that's a massive breakthrough. And Cure Parkinson's focuses on doing things quickly. So rather than researching drugs from first principles, they get existing drugs that have already been approved for human consumption for other conditions. And they test them for the benefit on Parkinson's, which means you can bring something to market in 5 years, not 20.
Right. Okay.
So I'm on one of the trials. I inject myself with a drug for diabetes, which is called exenatide, which stimulates the pancreas to make more insulin.
Okay.
But it also, and who knew this, right? It also has a neuroprotective benefit. So it protects the brain. So if you can protect the brain, that part of your brain that makes dopamine from dying off and stopping those cells dying, slowing that process down, you'll actually slow down the progression of the disease.
Right.
So that's in phase 3 trial in the UK right now.
So I mean, I suppose given that, I mean, it's nobody would want to wish anybody to have contract these kind of things, and I think every person that's listening to this podcast will probably have somebody they know that's been affected by something like this. I suppose the question I was thinking about when you were talking was what's on your bucket list? What are the things that you haven't done based on all these kind of things you've been through in your journey that you'd still like to do?
I love travel. My wife and I love traveling and learning about different cultures and civilization. And funny thing was, we decided that as the pandemic was just finishing, we said, one place on Earth that is the most populated with tourists normally, which you want to go to. Because if you go to it right now, there's going to be one there. Do you know where we went?
Land's End?
We went to the pyramids in Egypt.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
And you know what? No one there. No one there. It's great. It's amazing. Because normally it will be packed with tourists. Right? So we went down the valley of the Nile with the sphinxes and stuff, with a tour guide, and we went in. There was a couple of pyramids. We went in on our own with torches, and there was no one else there. It was amazing.
What? Literally, you were on the boat on the Nile, and there was nobody on the boat apart from you two.
The boat was a 15-berth, small river boat, but
okay,
there was some people there, but there wasn't like. It wasn't. I mean, we found ourselves in pyramids where there were no other tourists around. So, what an amazing experience! You would never normally get that.
Have you never been there before that?
No.
It's hot there, though, isn't it? It's very hot.
Well, we went in February, so it wasn't too bad. In fact, it was cold at night. But then, so it's journeys like that is what I really get excited by. So, ancient civilization, things to learn, places to see, and things to do. That's what gets me out of bed and motivates me, and I love to do more of that.
Well, I don't know if you. I mean, I know that obviously with the Salesforce HANA, yeah, with the family angle, there's a big tie to Hawaii. So I don't know if you. I presume you've been there.
Yeah, a couple of times, or more than a couple of times.
Because I was in Big Island on Big Island in October last year with the volcano, the active volcano. It was absolutely amazing. So highly recommend that to anybody that's listening to this show. So what else is on your bucket list then? Any other one that you want to share?
We're trying to plan a trip to Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia. And the reason we want to do that is because I've got 3 kids, my wife's got 2. They're all girls, just 5 of them. And they've all had backpacking trips with their mates.
Okay.
Around that part of Asia, and we've never been. So we're going to go and do it. Probably not in the same hotels.
I want to say you're not going to go backpacking.
No. But we are going to do it properly and see everything that we need to see. So that's the next big trip we're planning.
Fantastic. So I mean, it sounds like obviously you've done a lot. You've got a lot on. You've got this phenomenal success with Boardwave, which is fantastic. I'm looking forward to wearing my T-shirt at some point in the future. What do you see? What do you see in the future then? What's the future of what's your desire in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of the technology industry? Any perspectives on that? I mean, there's obviously been all this hiatus about AI and I don't like to use the C word, but it seems to be with the GPT in it because it seems to be on every single post, every single minute of the day and night on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Do you know why?
Do I know why?
Yeah, I think the reason why is it's in a format that anybody can understand. You can log onto a browser, bring it in your browser, type a question, and it answers it. My dad is 83, gets it. He now understands what the potential is for AI. It's a format where you can get our hands around.
It's consumable, yeah.
Consumable. Yeah. And that's the first time it's really been consumable. It's the same as the moment that we had. Remember the Netscape browser? First browser for the internet. Until then, it was like this academic, the internet thing. ARPANET, yeah. All of a sudden, you stick graphical user interface on top of it. People go, "Oh, now I see what it's for, or what it can do, and what its potential is, and what's happened over the last 30 years with the internet." And so
it's like when I was at Tesco and Telefonica when we got their first iPhone back from, Matthew Key coming flying back from Palo Alto, to get the first iPhone. That was, it's like completely revolutionizes that the human technology interaction, I suppose, isn't it?
So I do think it's a profound change that's happening, but it is also a dislocation of the current software industry, and all the services that surround it have got to change. And that inflection point is a massive opportunity for the European software industry to take a leadership position, or else suffer another 30 years behind the Americans and the Asians in terms of the depth of the strength of our industry in Europe. With the opportunities now, and it's available to us. There's a guy that I know called Larud Hendricks who runs Startup Bootcamp, which is the largest incubator in Europe, and he'll tell you the story that they use. They've got thousands of companies that come through their doors and through their program.
Well, is that like the equivalent of Y Combinator or something? Is that?
Yeah, like that, but it's a European. So it's the number one in Europe. It's the 4th largest in the world. It's a simple concept, and he's got thousands of companies that come through there now, and he runs analytics across all of them to see what's going on with all of them, and so he'll tell you. He can sort of try and spot the next trend. What's next on the agenda?
What's trending? Yeah.
Out the back door of these incubators. All of these thousands of companies are coming out the back door. All AI. Oh, really? There's a wave of stuff coming out. And then these are European based. A wave of stuff that's coming out now in the next few years. They've been working on this stuff for a while, before they bring it to market through the incubator. Like there's a massive wave of AI innovation that's coming that's just around the corner. So
it's not the .com boom, it's the .ai boom now.
Yeah, but I think that it's a little bit different. I think this is a more profound change. This can change the very fabric of society and the way it operates. I'm not sure that the dot-com boom could ever have done that. And I think there's less. I mean, maybe I'm wrong in this sort of hype cycle at the moment, but I think there's less these silly dot-com companies that were out there that were raising huge amounts of money with nothing behind them. So, hopefully we're a bit more sensible about the valuations and the hype cycle, and there's more substance to it, but a massive opportunity because everything changes, right? It's like if you're in a company that's doing online marketing, you have data scientists that go and try and understand Google and how the search engine works and do SEO, and SEM, search engine optimization, search engine marketing. You write your own copy and you write your own content. It's all changed. You might browse the internet through a ChatGPT interface in the future, not through Google. You know, the curated content that you create for your website or the white papers that you write could be written with an AI assistant. It has the potential to change a lot of things. And we just got. What
do you think about the impact on jobs, though? I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of, you know, you could say reduction in force or reshaping of a number of different big players. Do you think there's a new set of roles that are coming out in the future? Or
well, since the Industrial Revolution, it's innovation that's led us to the place we are today. And what it's done is created greater productivity per unit of work, per person. So each person is more productive today than they were before. That's how economies grow. It's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe that you won't be replaced by an AI. You'll be replaced by somebody that's using an AI to help them do their job. Will be more,
like an AI assistant, kind of.
Yeah, so that will be more productive than you can be on your own because they're using AI to do their job. So the units of production per person will increase, which helps to increase the economy to increase in size and scale, and humanity to be more successful and more wealthy, and all the things that brings with it. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's it's got to be kept in the right hands, out of the hands of bad actors, and we need inspect ethics and the things that go with that. But overall, we've got the opportunity to do something profoundly different, which could really take us in a positive direction and help everybody live better lives. I mean,
so it's not just rise of the machines; it's rise of the humans as well. That's what your assessment is.
So. Ultimately, when you think about what we've talked about generalized AI, is a long way away. Something that's multifunctional, multitasking is a long way away.
I'm looking forward to having that chip. Looking forward to having that chip in my head. The chip, the Neuralink thing. You're going to have, a chip in your head.
Well, you can get a chip in your head if you've got Parkinson's to help you with your movement disorder. So it's a risk.
Okay. Well, Elon's got his hand in that as well.
that neural mesh thing is invented, but for Parkinson's, there's a deep brain stimulation technology that you can use to maintain your movement.
Right. And so yeah, that's interesting on that point. I mean, in terms of the one of the things I read quite interestingly recently, which was an article you put out actually about the kind of economic situation this year and next year. I noticed you were kind of sounding back to some of the things that Mark Benioff used to talk to you about this kind of tactics dictate strategy. What's your outlook on that in terms of this year? I mean, are you seeing a sentiment with your Boardwave members that they are, planning for the doomsday, or because some of those interesting scenarios that you said about planning for the future?
Yeah, you have to plan, you have to have a strategy, and I think you've got a generation of people that are running businesses today that have never been through a recession.
Right.
They've been in business since after 2008, right? And they could be, how old could they be? They could be in their 30s, and they've missed the whole. They've never seen this happen before, so they need some help and guidance. But the tactics dictate strategy.
Yeah, they've been at school basically when the last recession. What's what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
So they need some help to understand what this means and how they run their business. But tactics dictate strategy just says you need a plan, you need a strategy. But when everything around you is changing, maybe you need to get tactical, and that will change the way you behave and what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's
that self-perpetuating circle, isn't it? Because I think tactics inform strategy, and also vice versa.
Yeah.
You've got to keep, that kind of continuous loop, haven't you?
So in the environment where we don't even know whether we're in a recession or not, on which direction the economy and interest rates are going to go this year, I think you've got to be nimble and be prepared to move quickly, preserve your capital, not spend it on anything frivolous, and hunker down and try and do the best you can to keep growing. But actually, most of the Boardwave members have been pretty optimistic so far. I've not seen a lot of pessimism with any of them. So yeah, you need to be nimble. And what we did at the beginning of the pandemic, when it was exact, we didn't know whether the pandemic was going to be existential for the company or whether it was going to be. We definitely didn't think it was going to be positive. So we built several business plans. We built a management case, a downside case in case it wasn't good, and a doomsday case. 3 versions of the plan, and we kept them alive. We kept updating them every month that went by. So we were ready if we were on the plan, the management plan, and things started going south. Revert to the downside plan. If it started getting worse than that, we'll go to the doomsday plan. So 3 different plans were managed.
The management plan being what, your normal budget, or the kind of plan for your stakeholders?
Normal cadence and rhythm for the business.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Downside was it's soft because customers are not
delaying decisions.
Yeah. They're going under or whatever's happening.
Right.
Software. The doomsday one is just it's just like everything's gone wrong, and the pandemic's taken a massive hit on the economy.
Was the doomsday plan where you actually stop trading, or is it kind of like
just north of that,
just like ticking over, basically? Yeah,
keeping it alive. Yeah,
right. Okay.
And what turns out is we beat the management plan. It turns out that by having people working at home, people recognise the need for technology and digitization to keep people working together.
Right.
Technology like the stuff we're using today with video, and invested more money in our software and what we do than before, because they recognise its value for
driving productivity and connectivity and communication.
Yeah. So we increased the growth rate. Did really well.
Wow.
We didn't know that at the beginning, so you've got to plan for the worst. So we had these 3 different scenarios. So you could do that now for the current economic situation in the same way.
So what's your view on all these layoffs then? I mean, did you think that they just didn't see the thing coming, or they just overhired? Or I mean, I've seen various different assessments on that. It seems like there's been some, like a lot of the big tech titans, you could say, have laid off lots of people. Is there any perspective on that? Is it just we think caught out, or just not plan it properly? Or
they had the same thing we had going on, which was actually demand increase, not decline during the pandemic.
Right. So is that spike? Yeah,
it's a spike. So if you've got a spike in demand, and you're a public company, and you don't exploit that spike in demand by hiring more people, your shareholders are going to go.
You're going to get crucified. Yeah,
you're going to get crucified. So you've got to hire against the demand in the marketplace. That's what they all did, which meant they got a lot of people in through the door that they hired, and of course now
then it comes back to normal cadence.
It's basically normalising itself. Fiscal policies, tightened, and things are being normalised over the next year or two. It's a normalisation process. That they don't have the same demand for their products. Unfortunately, they don't need as many people. So I don't think anybody did anything wrong. They just are managing for the situation in front of them.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. So, I mean, to wrap up this episode, I was going to ask you as a few just final questions.
Sure.
The final was so one of them is, what are you most grateful for?
Most grateful for my curiosity from my mother.
Okay, that's a good one. What are you most excited about?
Right now, AI and Boardwave.
Okay. Well, you better get the website boardwave.ai then.
What we started to do was we're just trying to blend AI with the database, because we've got an incredible database of the background expertise and experience of some of Europe's leading CEOs and their businesses. we just started putting an AI machine on top of all our data so that we can match schemas to each other automatically versus them having to find each other through a search.
Oh, it's like reverse mentoring or coaching and stuff like that, all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. And I suppose the final one is about what, if you were going to summarize some takeaways, some kind of pearls of wisdom from the desk of Mr. Robinson, what would they be?
What pearls of wisdom? Well, I think that you need to be vulnerable. I think you need to be open and talk about be your whole self all the time, which makes you more approachable, it makes you more interesting, it makes you more authentic, and it'll help you be more successful. I'm a working class kid. I had imposter syndrome for many years. In some situations, I still do. And so I would say, well, it's not taking yourself too seriously, because you shouldn't do that. Be confident in who you are and what you're doing, because everybody's blagging it just a little bit.
Right.
There's no reason why you shouldn't too, and you should have the confidence to know that you're as good as everybody else around you. And so that's two. What would the third one be? I think it's about my curiosity from my mother, going back to that. So she made me curious to always want to be knowing more and learning more things about anything in the world. Just be curious, be interested. That curiosity is the driving force that's made me who I am and do the things I've done, because these opportunities come along, and they come along from time to time. Most people would say, oh, no, I don't want to do that. That's going to put me outside of my comfort zone. Right. My advice to most people is, if these opportunities come along, grab them with both hands. Take you out of your comfort zone, and you'll learn amazing things and do amazing things with different people around the world. Always, when an opportunity comes along, always take it, because it's going to lead you to new and exciting things that you wouldn't have done.
Or a little adventure, a little trip to Cambodia or the Egyptian pyramids. You never know.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And if people want to know a bit more about you and what you're doing with your projects, what's the best way of finding out about that? Is there a particular place to go and find some more information?
Well, I do a lot on LinkedIn, so I spend a lot of time posting stuff on LinkedIn, both personal stuff and professional stuff. So always find me there, and I'm happy to connect to people there. Boardwave.org is the website for Boardwave, so everything about Boardwave is on boardwave.org. And I've got a blog that I started back in the days of Exact in the Netherlands called stirrednotshaking.com.
Oh, really?
And it's about my experiences with Parkinson's. I haven't done a lot with it recently, but it's got a chronology of things. And lots of people that I've got to know through Parkinson's that have got the disease have used that and understood the disease better, because they've seen the same experiences as they are having that I've had.
Right. Okay.
A bit about Parkinson's, stirrednotshaking.com.
And also, you I think you mentioned you're sponsoring a podcast as well. Is that right? A recent.
So, Boardwave is sponsoring on behalf of Cure Parkinsons, and it's a podcast series called Movers and Shakers. First episode came out this last week. It involves Rory Keflin-Jones, who was a technology correspondent for the BBC for many years. Jeremy Paxman, everybody will know.
Journalist. Yeah.
It also includes Mark Mardell from Radio 4, and Paul Mayhew Archer, who people may know was the author of The Vicar of Dibley. And he's a very funny man. All four of them. And there's also a judge and another lady that I'm not as familiar with. So 6 of them. All of them have got Parkinson's, all in the pub, all having a laugh and a joke and talking about what it's like to have this disease. And it sounds like a very boring topic, but actually it's quite funny.
We've got a really eclectic bunch of people there, haven't you? So that you can just imagine the conversations. Very, very rich.
In terms of journalistic circles, they're some of the most senior journalists and TV presenters we've got in the UK, and for one reason or another, they've all got Parkinson's. Wow!
So are you going to get invited to that little group in the pub at some point?
I'm going to make sure I'm paying for it.
You're going to gate crash it.
I'm going to get myself a beer at the pub with them. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and thank you for sharing so much and sharing your story. And Obviously, I'll wish you all the best with the Parkinsons, and obviously with Boardwave. It sounds like a fantastic initiative, and all power to you for that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for just your time. Appreciated, really much appreciated. So that was Phill Robinson, tech legend, and well, you are. Come on. And that was Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.